everyone, and welcome back to Wonder of Faith. I'm Anthony Bush, and I'm going to welcome you back, family, friends, fellow Wondresses, members of the faithful. We are moving right along with the Wondrous Orders, and I'm very excited because we've finally come to the constitutions, which is the rest of the orders. So we've talked about the orders themselves, and it kind of lays out a framework as to how we should act. And then we went through the foundations, which talks about how we apply those virtues of faith from the orders to our life of faith, of living in the church and religiously. But now we're going to head to the constitutions, and what these are is they are a collection of situations, of ideas, of concepts, of struggles that we are presented with. It's many various things and how the orders confront it. There are, I'm going to say 52 or 53 constitutions altogether, and we're going to start today with number 1. So the first constitution of the Wondrous Orders is in perfecta conjunctione, in perfect union. There's a Latin name and an English name. And in Constitution 1's whole gist, it kind of introduces the constitutions by talking about the way that the 4 virtues are related to each other and how they interact with one another to create a complete person, a person of holiness and of sanctity and of sainthood. And so it gives a little bit of theory on that. So what I plan to do is I'm going to read the Constitution, and I'll read line by line, and we'll talk about it. And I'll see if this format works, and if it does, I'll do this for the remainder of the Constitutions. If not, we'll try something else. So first, the introductory line. To show and prove the close relation between the 4 virtues of faith and show a better path to fulfilling the needs of all 4. So every constitution is going to have, first, the Roman numeral, which is the number. It's going to have a name in Latin and in script, and then a name in print, a symbol, and then kind of a summary of what it's about. And then finally you get to the Constitution itself. So it says here, the first section is the Behold. The Behold sections, as always, present and introduce an idea before they're dealt with by the rest of the Constitution. The power and strength of each virtue has been recognized in the Wondrous Orders. Individually, they help to govern certain aspects of the faith, but together they act to make up the best person and further reveal the power of faith. United under the Lord God, these virtues lead to the truth and the solidarity truth provides. It is when all 4 virtues in faith are in practice together that it becomes easier to seek the Lord and find Him. No matter what treacheries are faced, there will always be the fullness of faith that defends the soul and in turn spreads to the souls of others. So I'll stop here. So it is not enough to pursue each virtue independently of one another. So we can talk about loving others, and then understanding God and understanding faith and truth through doctrine, and then coming to meet God spiritually through wisdom, and then coming to understand ourselves and our identity through passion. These 4 things are all unified. We can think about them separately, but in the end they work together to create a fullness of person. And that's what the struggle of the orders is. It's through life being able to unify them more perfectly and to not be weak in one and not in the other, to have a balance. And so by bringing them together, by unifying them and having them work for one another, we create betterment. That's the whole gist. That's the whole plan of the orders. That's the point. And by doing this, we help ourselves and others as well. Since it is known that good can never be held back for long, it is understood that such grace that comes from faith should spread beyond the person, especially through the effects of the wielder. It is destined that the 4 virtues shall be united and realized, whether that be in this life or in the heavenly kingdom above. With this great revelation known, it is important that the ability to unify those 4 virtues be made known and defined. So even if we can't do it perfectly here on earth, which is probable, then in heaven they will be unified. We will have no more confusion, no more sinfulness, once we go through purgatory, of course. And so we will be perfectly loving, perfectly obedient, perfectly ourselves, and perfectly with God. These 4 things will come for us, but we in the now choose to pursue them so that we can find happiness here on earth. That's kind of the whole point of the Christian life, to know Christ, to know God, and of course through knowing them better ourselves and others. So this is quite simply the aim of the orders. We talk about what that entails, and there's much. But in the end, this is what its desire is, to make perfect our person for God through the four virtues of faith. So we talked about kind of the intro. Next section is the execution. This is how we get it done. This is the steps we take to understand and to better make this a reality. In order for personal faith to be unified, it is necessary to draw from the strongest virtue and perfect it as best as possible. By being strong in one virtue, that strength can be used to express power in the other three. So a good place to start, if we are truly trying to perfect ourselves for God, we have to figure out which virtue are we most comfortable with. Which one do we have ease at expressing most? So heart, as in you're very good, or you naturally love quite deeply, and your actions show that. Doctrine, you're quite logically inclined. You like thinking, you like knowledge, and you're very good at assimilating information and understanding it. Passion, you have a strong sense of who you are, and you have a lot of self-knowledge. And wisdom, you have a strong connection to the divine. That's spiritual and intuitive almost. So you can be good at more than one, but there is probably one that you're best at. For me, I've always thought doctrine was my strongest. I was always best at thinking and understanding and systematizing. I made the wondrous orders after all. That's what I'm good at. And so by being strong in doctrine, of understanding and having curiosity and wanting to know, I can use that strength and then use it to perfect the other three. So for heart, for instance, by understanding what love is theoretically and how it is shown, I can understand intellectually what love is. But then through that understanding, I can practice living it and acting in love. Same with identity. If I ask myself questions and I come to learn who I am through my curiosity, I can then begin to understand on a deep level my person, and then being solidly me. So each virtue in some way can be used to strengthen the other three. And so we start in one corner, one virtue, and then we slowly kind of invade and move into the others until all four are within our grasp. It is best to leave the hardest to practice for last, for by then it will be much easier, since the virtues build on one another infinitely. So what it's saying is, let's say I start with doctrine, then move to heart, then move to wisdom, then finally passion. With each one I practice and get more fluent with, the other two will become easier to obtain, because I now have two virtues working together to obtain the other two. So it compounds each time, because you're good in more disciplines, and then you have more ways, more avenues to gain strength in the others. Now, this isn't to say that just because I'm good at doctrine, I'm not going to be loving. That's not what I'm saying. You don't ignore heart altogether because I'm focusing on passion. But what you do is you intentionally put effort into one, but you still should practice the others in the meantime. It doesn't mean you just give up on them, but you just have a particular focus on a virtue, and then you move from one to the next. And this is not something that happens within a month, a year. It's a lifetime process. So we always have to be practicing all four. But it's just a matter of which one are we struggling with the most, and which do we want to get better at. Kind of having each one move up one after the other. Here defined shall be the relation between the four and how intertwined they are. In doctrine flows the other three. The other three virtues are not as tangible as doctrine. Thus, doctrine is needed in order to make real the goals and graces of the other three. So doctrine is first in the sense of understanding, to comprehend the orders. The wondrous orders themselves are an expression of doctrine because they lay out a path, they lay out a system so that we can obtain the other three virtues. So when it comes to practicality, doctrine is first. When something real is given order, it is better understood and able to be appreciated as to be ever more attainable. Heart is necessary for the other virtues to be practiced. This pursuit of truth and faith is impossible without the inner love of self and the Lord as well as others. So heart is the first virtue when it comes to action, because in order to act, we must do it for a reason. And the strongest reason to act is for love, for care, for selflessness. So heart leads the other three in being so that we do it for this purpose, out of love, that drives us toward the good. So doctrine is first when it comes to practicality. Heart is first when it comes to action. Love is what begins the journey and what allows that journey to continue on until its wondrous conclusion in the Lord. Passion is the foundation. In order to seek the fullness of faith, it is necessary that you first know yourself and understand how you can come about being a better version of yourself. So doctrine is first in practicality, heart is first in action, but passion is first as support. In order to love perfectly, in order to know God well, in order to learn and understand, we have to be confident in ourselves to be able to do those things. And passion, therefore, acts as the strong foundation that the other three build upon. Without self-confidence or self-love or self-knowledge, we cannot serve others or even God because we don't understand or truly know who we are. Because if we did know who we are, we value ourselves and we love ourselves. So passion is necessary as the first to act as the groundwork for the other three to flourish. Identity is a key part of living a life that is good and beneficial to self and all. Wisdom is the light by which we see where we are going. Only by the guidance of God can we truly find Him. The virtue of wisdom instills in the other virtues that grace given by God that makes them powerful and self-bettering. So grace or wisdom is first in nourishment in a way. Through the grace of God and by our connection to God, we can love more perfectly. We can come to know more surely. We can come to understand ourselves well. It's all about God being able to be a part of the virtues and of us living it out. And wisdom is the gate for that because we are entreating God and understanding, coming to know God as our Father. So doctrine is first in practicality. Heart is first in action. Passion is first as foundation. And wisdom is first as nourishment. Each one has its own strength and the others build from them. It's just a matter of which one do we start with? That's a question you have to ask God and yourself. Without wisdom, there is only blindness and a failure to come to faith. When the value of all four virtues is realized, only then can they come together to form one faith that is good and pure. So when we truly appreciate and practice all four and are building all four, then only can we say that we are growing. Because if we only grow in doctrine, then that's lopsided. We're not really being whole because we're only worrying about one aspect of ourselves. We have to give all four attention, time, practice for us to be holistic. Finally, the onward. This is the last note that kind of leads us on our lives based on what we've talked about. In all these things, let there be an acknowledgement of this perfect union of four, and may they guide always as a companion, guide, inspirer, and rule of life. So if we always have the four in mind and we always seek them well, then we will truly find holiness eventually because we are listening to God. We are caring for the other. We are coming to know what it means to be good. And we are coming to see who we are. All these things together create a person who's growing in holiness. Of course, this comes with trusting God, trusting the church, and allowing the sacramental faith of the Catholic Church, the sacraments that give us grace to help us grow our virtues and strengthen them. So always keep this in mind. Always strive for the better. And we may fail. That's normal. That's part of humanity. But as long as we are true to them and we're moving upward, never stagnating or moving downward. If we're moving upward in them, then we're moving towards better holiness and our better self. And that's all we can ask for with the help of God. That's all we want. We want to come to Him. And by coming to Him, we grow as people and we move up. We become better people. Finally, there is a Bible verse for each constitution, and I'm going to read this from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. Walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love, being diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as also you were called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all, and through all, and in all. So this verse helps us especially to see in patience and tolerance and love, all these things working together to make us into, we hope, saints. There's one God, there's one truth, and so we move toward that truth in the hope that we may become better and truly be happy and fulfill who God made us to be. So that is it for Constitution 1 in perfect union. This is one of over 50, so we're going to be in for quite a while, but I'm excited. There are so many different topics and things we get to talk about. So this basically sets the layout of most constitutions. There are some exceptions, but this is the way it'll go. We'll just talk about these subjects and really dive into them. As always, I hope you find final victory in Christ, and may God be with you and bless you.